Last week we talked about the most misunderstood and misused control on the motorcycle, the clutch. This week on MCrider we'll continue our control series and we'll talk about the most powerful control on the motorcycle. But before we get into this video, what do you think the most powerful control on the motorcycle will be? You have any guesses? Well, keep that in your head and we'll see if you're right here in a few minutes. If you see any ad campaign for a new motorcycle, what image do they try to create with that motorcycle? They show some young rider picking up an attractive girl and going for a ride through some urban or mountain setting. They're rolling on the throttle and the instant response of the engine to that throttle input. They'll stop at a stoplight and they'll rev the throttle a little bit so you can hear the sound of the engine. They have you convinced that owning this motorcycle and revving this throttle will instantly make you more attractive. It'll add at least 3 inches to your height and make you about 75 pounds lighter. So this is the sales pitch, but this is the reality. Just a bunch of slightly overweight guys standing around talking about motorcycles. So reality and marketing rarely see eye to eye, and all of that talk about engines and throttle response can also confuse a rider as to the most powerful control on the motorcycle. What was your answer earlier about the most powerful control on the motorcycle? Was your answer the throttle? Well, the throttle has some power behind it, no doubt, but there is one control that absolutely puts it to shame when it comes to the power it has to control movement on a motorcycle: the front brake. Proper use of the front brake is your most powerful control when it comes to riding a motorcycle, and improper use of the front brake can lead to instant regret. So let's talk about why it's such an important control to master this week as we look at the all-powerful front brake on the motorcycle. When we see riders out on the track, the first thing that comes to mind is speed. Man, these guys are really good at riding a motorcycle at speed. But the thing that separates the fastest rider from the average rider out on the track are not the ones who are best with the throttle, it's the ones who have mastered the brakes, particularly the front brake. I was at a motorcycle convention once and I was listening to an up-and-coming professional rider on the AMA circuit. This was a young guy who was really making progress in his career and becoming one of the top riders in the AMA. During that Q&A, someone asked him what he was still working on in his riding skills. His answer was not getting out of corners faster. It was not improving the throttle hand. His answer was he was still working on getting better with the front brake. When approaching a corner at speed, he was trying to get better at getting a feel of that braking to be able to brake at 35% of power as compared to braking at 34% of power. He was working on being smoother with the brakes and at the same time being quicker to get to the braking threshold without locking up or causing the bike to get out of balance. This rider understood the power of the front brake and how the application of that control could separate him from the competition. You know, when I was learning to ride back in the 70s, the police officer who gave me my riding exam to get my license had some words of advice for me. He said to stay away from the front brake, it'll get you hurt. Now, we know today that this was bad advice, but at that time, and still some today, it's a common belief. Many riders are afraid of the front brake and they're hesitant to use it to stop their motorcycle. But there's a huge difference between improper use and proper use of the front brake. Some ways that riders improperly use the front brake is they use the front brake at slow speeds, especially when the handlebars are turned, or they slam on the brake in a panic stopping situation. So let's look at each of these. You know, the quickest way I know to drop a motorcycle is to have the handlebars turned at slow speed and use the front brake. That's one mistake that's probably led to more bruised egos and scratched chrome than any other mistake I can think of. When riding a motorcycle at slow speeds, just stay away from that front brake. Use the clutch in the friction zone, as we talked about last week, and drag the rear brake to help improve your balance at slower speeds and to come to a stop. But make sure those handlebars are square when you come to your stop. Technique is important, and not using the front brake during slow-speed motorcycle control is one that will help keep you upright. In every other situation out on the street, stopping quickly, normal stop, slowing down for a corner, or if you need the brakes to slow down out on the road, the proper technique is to smoothly use the front and rear brake anytime the brakes are applied. But can you stop just using one or the other, front or rear? Well, the answer to that is yes. But if this is your habit that you're developing, it's a bad habit, and it will hurt your stopping distance or your total stopping distance when you need to stop in a hurry. So why do I say it's a bad habit? It's because when we're in an emergency, we don't have time to think about proper technique. We don't pause and go, okay, I should use the front and rear brake this time. We just do what we're accustomed to doing. And if your daily habit is not using the front and rear brake at a stop, it won't be your reaction when you need to stop quickly. I'm sure you've all heard that the front brake can provide 70 to 90% of the stopping power on the motorcycle, depending on the type of motorcycle that you've got. Now, that's a lot of stopping power, but in an emergency, I want 100% of the stopping power, and that requires proper use of the front and rear brakes. The only way I will have 100% of the brake stopping power available to me in an emergency is if I've made that my habit to use the front and rear brake correctly every time I go to the brakes under normal situations. And remember, we don't automatically perform the correct technique in an emergency. We do what we do on a daily basis. If our habit's just using the rear brake at a stop, that's what we'll do in an emergency. If our habit is using only the front brake, while that will provide more stopping power if applied correctly than the rear brake, we still lose some stopping power overall, and that's what we'll do in an emergency is go only to that front brake. So build up that muscle memory with proper front and rear brake application at every stop, and that'll be there for you when you need it in an emergency. Now, I've been careful to say throughout this video, proper brake application on numerous occasions, because you can improperly use the front brake, and that can also get you into trouble. So what's our natural reaction with the front brake in an emergency? So we're riding along, we got our hands on the throttle, we're in an emergency, car pulls out in front of us, we roll off the throttle, we grab that front brake. That is everybody's natural reaction to needing to stop quickly, is reaching out and grabbing the front brake. Now, motorcycle tires, they're very good at handling a heavy load, but they're really bad at handling an abrupt load. So if you don't properly apply that front brake and give the motorcycle some time for the weight to shift forward, get more weight on that front tire, you can easily stop this tire from spinning before weight has had a chance to transfer to the front, and that'll cause a lockup, and that'll cause a crash all on its own. But if your initial application of the front brake is smooth and the motorcycle is able to transition weight to the front tire, it can provide an incredible amount of stopping power. Now, I hear a lot of riders say, well, I've got ABS, so I just slam on the brakes and let the ABS do its job. But even on a motorcycle with ABS, you want that initial application of the brakes to be smooth. Notice I didn't say slow. I didn't say you barely apply that front brake. I said smooth. Smooth can also be quick, but it takes training and repetitions to get there. Now, I'm a firm believer in ABS, but it's a backup tool if I apply too much brake, or the road conditions change mid-brake, or the road conditions are bad to begin with. ABS, in my opinion, is a great to have safety feature, and I want it on all my motorcycles, but it does not change my technique for stopping a motorcycle. So practice emergency braking on a regular basis and develop the proper technique. If you're still not sure what the proper braking technique is and you have other questions about braking in general, I put together a page on MCrider with some of the most popular MCrider videos on the subject of motorcycle braking. You can find that at mcrider.com/brakes. Members can also get these and all current MCrider videos 100% ad-free. In addition, you'll also get access to the forums and the field guide, along with opportunities for free MCrider merchandise. So head over to mcrider.com/member to learn about becoming a member and supporting my ability to keep making videos just like this for the motorcycle community. And until next week, guys, it's Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road.